In this video, I want to talk a little more formally about how we use different kinds of operators. So we've seen arithmetic operators, addition, subtraction, multiplication is the asterisk, division we saw was the slash, and then there's this remainder operator, also called modulo, that's the percent sign. So we can, if we have an expression with a subtraction in it, what that means is that we're taking two numbers and producing another number. So this whole area that I have highlighted in gray here, because of this subtraction, what it means is we've taken this number, so whatever number got returned from this method, and this number, this 20, and we're subtracting the two, and we're producing another number, and that number that we got produced is what gets passed to the turn method. So there's some number, this gray rectangle produces some number, and we turn by that amount. So one thing you can do with your arithmetic operators is use them as input to methods that need an integer as input. Another thing you can do is you can return. You can use your arithmetic operators in expressions that that return an int, right? Because we're going to add. So we have this parameter a. Since a is an integer, we can add a to another integer. We can say return a plus 1. And notice we have a return type of int here. So as long as we have a return type of int and we're adding integer to integer, then we can say return with this expression here, with this a plus 1, and return a number. We also have equality and relational operators that we've seen before. So we used that in the in an earlier example in the ACT method. So these what these operators do is they take two integers and produce a Boolean value. So a Boolean value, one place we can use a Boolean value is in a condition, right? If we have a condition for our if statement, we can use any of these relational operators to produce a Boolean that we can provide to if for our condition. Okay. Another thing that we can do, again, as we saw before with we can return ints. If we're using arithmetic operators, we can add two ints together and produce an int and return an int. If we want to return a Boolean, we can compare two integers using one of these operators and produce a Boolean. Then we have conditional operators, and or, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these because these are not really exactly the way we think of and or in everyday speech, but we can imagine, for example, if we move a certain number of steps, if we bump into the sides some way that we want to, then we want to back up. So this is a bounce move, okay? And the conditional operator I'm using here is the or operator. This is the conditional or. So what I'm saying is, if my x position is less than 10, or if my x position is greater than the width of the world minus 10, then I'm going to bounce back. I'm not going to go, through the wall or whatever. And I'm doing the same thing over on this side. Okay, so you can use this operator. So these operators operate on two Boolean values and produce another Boolean value. So here we have get x less than 10. That's going to be either true or false. And this side, this is another comparison. We're comparing our x position with the number that I get when I subtract 10 from getWorld.getWidth. So I'm comparing those two numbers and getting a Boolean. And then what the OR does is the OR combines those two Booleans and produces another Boolean. So what for the end result is then this whole gray rectangle produces a Boolean that I have for my condition. You can also use and an OR to combine. For example, here talking is a Boolean, so I'm combining this Boolean with this Boolean, right? This expression is going to be true or false. So this produces a Boolean value, this produces a Boolean value, and the AND combines those two. So I mentioned before that AND and OR in Java don't work exactly the way we think of it in English. So a better way to think about it is it's really they're operators just like addition and subtraction and multiplication, and all those are operators. So there are rules that we follow. When we add 0 plus 1, we get 1, and when we multiply 0 times 1, we get 0. It's the same idea with AND and OR. When you AND two true values, you get another true value. Okay, so it's better to think of it, like I said, think of it in terms of this table. That when you AND a true and a true, you get a true. When you OR a true and a true, so I'm thinking like if we have, think of these as parameters P and Q, right? So it could be that P, you got past parameters where P is true and Q is true. Well, the result of ANDing P and Q would be true, and the result of ORing P and Q would be true. If you AND together a true and a false, though, you always get a false. Okay, so it's like if you multiply a 1 and a 0, you get a 0. Okay, but if you add a 1 and a 0, you get 1. So if you OR together true and false, you get true, right? If you AND together a false and a true, it's like multiplying a 0 times a 1 always gives you a 0. ANDing together a false and a true always gives you a false. Okay, but just like adding 0 and 1 always gives you a 1, ORing together false and true always gives you true. Okay, and then finally false with false will always give you, will AND to a false and will OR to a false. So it's like 0 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 0 is 0. Okay, so kind of think of it that way, and I think that'll help when you're coding. There are also unary operators, they're called. So unary operators might operate on integers or might operate on Booleans. Here's a unary operator, a minus sign, that operates on a number, right? It just gives you the negative of whatever that number is. So if the parameter happens to be a 7, then the minus sign will turn it into a negative 7. If the parameter value that you happen to get is a negative 8, and you put a minus in front of it, then it'll be converted into an 8, right? It'll just flip to the opposite. And the same idea actually, but operating on Booleans, is the exclamation point. So the exclamation point flips the Boolean value to be something else. So let's say we decide we're going to sleep in either if it's not a weekday or if we're on vacation. So weekday will be, so if we put a negative sign in front of there, so if we get passed down the fact that weekday is false, it's not a weekday, then if we negate that, we'll get a true here. And this will say this will say true. So whether or not we're on vacation, if it's not a weekday, we can sleep in. So just to summarize, for the arithmetic operators, we take two integers and we produce another integer. Okay, so 4 plus 2 will give us a 6. 10 minus 9 will give us a 1. Okay, so that's the idea. Arithmetic operators, two integers, we get another integer. Then we have equality and relational operators, where we take two integers and we produce a Boolean. So if we say, for example, 5 equals 5, we get a true. 5 not equal to 5 gets us a false, and so on. And then we have conditional operators, where we can combine two Booleans and get another Boolean. So we can say true and false gives us a false. True or false gives us a true. Or we also can have unary operators, where we have minus 7 gives us like 0 minus 7, or the opposite of 7, however you want to, or negative 1 times 7, however you want to say that. And then the exclamation point turns a true into a false, or a false into a true, like that. Okay, so those are the basic operators we're going to be working with.